I first caught her slipping out of my apartment in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. sharp. She turned on me with that icy glare and said, "You don't own me. I'll come back whenever I feel like it." I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just nodded. But when she finally showed up days later, she wasn't walking back into my arms. Someone else was waiting for her inside, and it sure as hell wasn't me. The sound that woke me was the faint click of the deadbolt. It was 2:17 on a Tuesday morning, and something about the noise felt off. Too careful, too controlled. I sat up, instantly alert, and in the dim light I saw her shadow moving. Already dressed, bags slung at her side, heading for the door. By the time I caught up to her at the entryway, she wasn't looking guilty. She was irritated. Irritated that I had woken up and caught her in the act. She stood there glaring at me, her eyes hard in the glow of the hallway light. "You don't own me, Ethan," she spat. "I'll be back when I feel like it." I didn't shout. I didn't demand answers. I just stood there in silence, watching her walk out and shut the door behind her. She thought she was making some bold statement about independence. In her mind, she was proving she could treat my apartment like a hotel and me like some concierge at the desk. What she didn't realize was that, with that one defiant sentence, she had checked out of my life permanently. And when she eventually decided to return, she wouldn't be finding me on the other side of that door. She'd be coming face to face with the one person she dreaded more than anything, sitting on my couch, waiting to give her the lesson in consequences she'd spent her whole life trying to outrun. See, my job is security consulting. I spend my days studying threats, finding weak spots, and designing systems to keep people and property safe. My entire career has been about spotting danger before it hits and shutting it down before things spiral. The irony wasn't lost on me. The biggest security failure of my entire life had been right there in my bed for the last 6 months. I'm 39, own a condo in a high-end, well-secured building. My lifestyle is orderly, structured, calm. Or at least it was until Lila. I met her about a year ago. She's 32, a chaotic ball of energy who makes a living doing freelance design work, just enough to fund her next thrill. She liked to call herself a free spirit. At the time, I thought it was charming. I convinced myself her energy was exciting, a good balance against my disciplined way of living. Truth is, I was just the perfect Ethan, mistaking a lack of integrity for personality. She moved in 6 months back. That was her idea, not mine. Said her lease was ending, told me she wanted to take life seriously with me. I agreed, but with one condition. She needed to contribute. Nothing major, just a set share of utilities and groceries. I wasn't about to let anyone freeload. She agreed. But the money never came on time. Always an excuse, always some story. And I let it slide. That was mistake number 1, treating a vulnerability like it was just part of the risk I had to accept. The late nights started not long after that. She'd stumble in past midnight, smelling like smoke and cheap beer, long after I'd gone to bed. When I asked her where she'd been, she'd bristle. "I was out with friends." "Ethan, you're not my warden." She tossed around words like controlling and suffocating, when all I was doing was asking a normal question any partner would ask. The red flags were everywhere, waving right in my face, but I ignored them. I was too emotionally wrapped up, and my judgment was compromised. Then came last Tuesday, the click of that lock. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, practiced. The kind of quiet exit that takes intention. But I'm a light sleeper. I got up, walked into the hallway, and there she was. Leather jacket on, purse over her shoulder, frozen mid-step like a deer caught in headlights. The confrontation was quick and merciless. "Going somewhere?" I asked, my voice steady, no emotion behind it. Fear flickered in her face, but in an instant it twisted into anger. A classic deflection. "I don't have to tell you where I'm going," she snapped. 2 in the morning, walking out without a word. In an apartment we share. "Yeah, you do." That's when she dropped the line that cut everything to pieces. She stepped closer, contempt all over her face. "You don't own me, Ethan. I'll be back when I feel like it." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and I stood there alone in the silence. The hurt hit me cold and sharp, but then the instincts kicked in. My home, my peace, my life compromised. A breach had happened, and breaches have to be dealt with. So I didn't call her. I didn't text. I let her walk straight into the consequences I was setting up for her. Step 1. Secure the perimeter. I logged into my security system, deactivated her fob and entry code, changed the master password. By 2:25 a.m., she was completely locked out of both the building and the apartment. Step 2. Shut down her access. I went through our shared accounts, the phone plan, streaming services, Amazon. Changed every password. Removed her name from everything. Her little subsidized lifestyle was being dismantled piece by piece. Step 3, the big one. The move she'd never anticipate. I thought about who she was, what she actually valued. She loved calling it freedom, but really it was running from responsibility. And who, in her entire life, represented the exact opposite of that? Who was the one person she hated being judged by? The one man she feared? Her father, retired General David Hawkins. 30 years in the military. Discipline, order, accountability carved into his DNA. Lila had spent her entire adult life running as far from his shadow as possible. Hell, she moved across the country to get away from him. And yet, he was still paying her phone bill and car insurance. Some independence, right? I had his number saved from a polite introduction last Christmas. I picked up my phone and dialed. It was close to midnight his time, but I knew a man like him wouldn't be asleep yet. He answered on the second ring, voice crisp and alert. Miller, General. Sir, I said, calm and respectful. This is Ethan. Sorry to call so late, but there's an issue with Lila you need to know about. I gave him everything. No drama, no whining. Just straight facts. I told him about her sneaking out, her little speech, and that the relationship was over. I told him I'd secured the apartment, and she wasn't getting back inside. As of that moment, his daughter was homeless. He stayed quiet for a long time. I could hear him breathing, letting it all sink in. She's done this before, Ethan, he finally said, voice heavy with decades of disappointment. Runs off whenever things get tough. I understand, sir, I replied. But my home isn't going to be her crash pad anymore. She needs to go back to you. What exactly are you suggesting? He asked. I'm suggesting a solution, I said. I'll pack her stuff. You come out here, pick her up, and take her home. General, you're the only one she can't run from. And then came the pause. A long, telling silence. When? He asked. She said she'd come back when she felt like it. I told him. If I had to guess, 2 or 3 days once the fun wears off. Can you be here by Friday? I'll be on the first flight tomorrow morning, he said without hesitation. Then the line went dead. The trap was in place. Lila was out there playing at her free-spirited fantasy, completely unaware that her worst nightmare was already in motion, flying across the country to collect her. She wasn't just about to lose her apartment. She was about to lose the illusion that she was free at all. Update 1 3 days later. The support from this community has been solid. A steady line of clarity in what could have been a messy situation. It confirmed what I already knew. Once that line was crossed, there was no going back. The last 3 days have been nothing but careful, methodical execution. General Hawkins landed Wednesday morning, right on schedule. Even in civilian clothes, the man carried himself like a storm contained in human form. Rigid posture, commanding presence, authority that radiated without him needing to say a word. We shook hands at my door, and for a moment we didn't need to speak. It was mutual recognition, 2 men approaching the same problem from different sides. I respect the way you've handled this, Ethan, he said, scanning my apartment with sharp eyes, noting every detail of its order and cleanliness. I'm just neutralizing a threat to my security, General, I answered. Over the next 2 days, we dismantled Lila's life piece by piece, boxing it up with cold precision. Felt strange, almost clinical. The General was relentless, sorting her clothes, her paints, her half-finished projects, like a man cataloging evidence. He unearthed things I hadn't even known were there. A shoebox stuffed with maxed-out credit card bills, a diary laced with bitter entries about how her life was suffocating her, how she deserved more. He didn't say a word about any of it. He just taped the boxes shut. In the quiet hours, we talked. He told me about her childhood, her constant rebellion against any sort of structure, about the jobs she quit, the debts unpaid, the chaos that followed her like a shadow. He said he'd hoped maybe I would have been the one to anchor her. I think, he said, sealing up a box of shoes. She mistook your stability for a safety net to leap from, instead of a foundation she could build on. He was right. Lila finally resurfaced Friday afternoon, almost exactly 72 hours after she stormed out. My system alerted me when the doorman called to say she was downstairs, demanding access. I told him no. She wasn't a resident anymore. Minutes later, my phone lit up with her name. I ignored it. Then came the texts. They started sharp and angry, shifted to confused, then slid into pleading. Ethan, what the hell? The doorman won't let me up. Why isn't my key fob working? Did you seriously lock me out? This isn't funny. Ethan, please, my phone's dying. I've got nowhere to go. Just let me in so we can talk. I didn't respond. I just sat there on the couch with the general, both of us watching the messages pile up. He glanced at his phone, then back at me. She's calling me now, he said. He put it on speaker. Dad? Lila's voice cracked. Frantic, desperate. Something's wrong with Ethan. He's locked me out. He won't answer me. Can you please call him? Get him to open the door? I know he's not answering you, Lila, the general said, his tone granite. Because I'm in his apartment right now. Silence. I could practically see her face as it dawned on her, realizing exactly what that meant. What? She whispered. I'm here to take you home, he said firmly. Ethan and I already talked. Your little vacation's over. The doorman will let you up. He ended the call. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, she stood there pale and disheveled, her eyes darting between me and the immovable figure of her father in the entryway. The fire drained out of her instantly. The proud, defiant woman who had stormed out 3 nights ago was gone. What stood there now was a cornered child. What's he doing here? She murmured, barely audible. He's here because you're no longer my responsibility, I told her. You said you'd come back when you felt like it. That was your choice. You gave up your place here. Your father's here because he's willing to take you in. You called my dad? She shrieked, the anger flashing back. You went behind my back and called him? You had no right. The general cut her off. He had every right, Lila. It's his home, and you treated both it and him with zero respect. You've been living in a fantasy world. That ends today. Your things are packed. We leave tomorrow morning at 0800. She tried everything. Anger, tears, manipulation. She turned to me, voice cracking, pleading. Ethan, please. I was stupid. Don't do this to me. It's already done, I said evenly, motioning toward the neat line of boxes by the wall. Your new life starts now. That night, she stayed in the guest room. The general took the couch. No one spoke. She didn't eat. She barely moved. For the first time in her life, she was grounded by the consequences she'd spent years outrunning. Update 2 weeks later. It's been 2 weeks since I drove Lila and her father to the airport. The silence in my apartment has changed. It isn't heavy anymore. It's clean. It's the sound of order restored. And I want to thank everyone who followed along and left comments. Turns out this behavior is a lot more common than I thought. According to the general's quick follow-up call, the flight home was miserable. Lila sat in stony silence, sulking like a teenager, refusing to say a word. But the real shock came when she walked back into her parents' home. The rules were clear, and for once they weren't optional. Her little freelance career, a few odd projects here and there, was dismissed as what it was, a hobby, not a job. She had 30 days to find full-time work. Her nights of drinking, sneaking around, and rolling in whenever she felt like it were over. She had a curfew. She had chores. She was expected to pull her weight like every other adult in that household. For the first time in her life, she was being treated like the grown woman she claimed to be, and she was falling apart under the weight of it. She tried painting me as the villain, of course. Called up her friends. Spun the story of her obsessive ex who locked her out and called her father to drag her away. It backfired spectacularly. One of them, Claire, the only one I ever thought had any real sense, actually reached out to me. She apologized. I have to be honest, Ethan, she said. We all knew she was seeing someone else. We told her she was pushing her luck. She's done this before, uses people for stability, then bolts when she's bored. What you did, honestly, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to her. That call hit harder than anything else. It was validation. Proof that this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was who she really was. And the man she'd been sneaking off to see, predictably gone. A bartender from a dive bar she and her friends liked. He wasn't interested in a long-distance thing with a broke, unemployed woman back under her father's roof and strict rules. Within a week, He stopped answering her calls. My life, compared to the storm she left behind, has finally settled back into something steady and productive. I scrubbed my apartment from top to bottom, making sure every trace of her was gone. The last reminder of her was that awful, stiff couch she insisted we buy. So I sold it and replaced it with a timeless leather one that feels like it actually belongs to me. These days, I've been diving into my work with focus I haven't had in years, and I just landed a major client that's going to take up most of my attention for the next few months. Honestly, I welcome the distraction. Work feels clean, predictable, and logical, 3 things that were completely missing when she was around. But I still had one last bit of unfinished business to take care of. Lila had left behind a few expensive things. Gear that I had bought for her design career. A laptop, some professional camera equipment. Her father eventually called me, asking what I wanted to do with all of it. I told him to sell it, I said plainly. Use the money to cover the security deposit from her last apartment. I know she never paid it. There was this long pause on the line before he finally asked, "How did you know that?" I couldn't help but give a small smile. It's my job to know things. Just tell her the rest of the money can be considered a severance package. That was the message. I wasn't just cutting her off emotionally. I was closing every loophole, sealing every back door that tied her to me. This was the final invoice paid in full. Final update 3 months later. It's been 3 months now. The seasons have shifted, and honestly, so has my entire life. Completely for the better. That chapter with Lila is closed, locked, and shelved away. The ending turned out sharper and more poetic than anything I could have scripted myself. I still hear little things about her through acquaintances. From what I gather, life back at her father's house has been a brutal reality check. She did get a job because she had no choice. She's working as a junior designer at a small local advertising agency, pulling an entry-level salary. Her days of working a few hours a week and then chasing so-called experiences are dead and gone. Now it's 9 to 5, a commute, a boss breathing down her neck. By every account, it's her personal nightmare. On top of that, her relationship with her father has turned toxic. She hates his control, and he can't stand her lack of discipline. For the first time in her life, she's being forced to actually live within her means, and she's finding out her means are a lot smaller than she ever believed. About a month ago, she even tried to crawl back. A long, messy email somehow ended up in my junk folder. It was textbook manipulation. She called me her rock, said she hadn't realized how good she had it, blamed her mistakes on commitment issues, her upbringing, on everything except herself. She ended it with this grand declaration that she was finally growing up, and asked if we could just talk. I didn't even bother responding. Deleted it right away. People don't change just because life corners them. Real change only happens when someone takes responsibility for how they got there in the first place. And she wasn't doing that. She was just looking for an escape rope. The truth is, the most satisfying part of this whole mess wasn't the confrontation, or even watching her downfall. It was the slow, deliberate process of reclaiming my life. Revenge, if you can even call it that, wasn't a loud explosion. It was quiet, strategic, precise. I identified the weak points, assessed the risk, and executed a plan to cut it out. She thought her strength was in her defiance, in acting untouchable, in coming and going as she pleased. She never understood that real strength isn't in chaos. It's in stability. It's in self-reliance. It's in the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't need anyone else to define his life. I didn't need to yell, threaten, or break down to win. All it took was a single phone call and the natural order of her life closed in around her. Now, I'm seeing someone new. She's an architect, sharp, ambitious, and her life is as solid and structured as the buildings she designs. When we talk, it's about foundations, integrity, about creating things that last. When she stays over, she doesn't sneak out before dawn. She's still there in the morning, making coffee, talking about what we want to do that day. This isn't a sponsorship, it's a partnership. Lila's final act of desperation was to spread the word that I ruined her life. But I didn't. I just stopped letting her ruin mine. I opened the door and she walked right out. The truth is, her father wasn't the villain. He was simply the reality waiting on the other side. She once told me, "You don't own me." She was right. But what she forgot was that she didn't own me either. And the moment she lost sight of that, the game was over. She just didn't realize it.